My golden child brother's accident made me invisible to my parents. After his death, they wanted to reconnect, but I set boundaries. I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am. I'm Lena, 24F, and I've been dealing with some family drama that's been eating me up inside. It all started when my older brother, Jordan, 28M, got into a terrible car accident 5 years ago. He was driving recklessly after a night out with his friends, something our parents had always warned him about. The accident left him partially paralyzed from the waist down. To understand the full impact of this event, I need to take you back to our childhood. Jordan and I grew up in a small suburban town, the kind where everyone knows everyone else's business. Our parents, Mark, 55M, and Miranda, 53F, were well respected in the community. Dad was a successful lawyer, and Mom was a high school teacher. They had big dreams for their children, especially Jordan. From the moment he could walk, Jordan was the golden child. He excelled at everything he tried: sports, academics, music. By the time he was in high school, he was the star quarterback, valedictorian, and had colleges falling over themselves to recruit him. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, bookish type. I preferred staying in and reading rather than going out. While Jordan was winning football games, I was winning spelling bees and science fairs. But somehow, my achievements always paled in comparison to Jordan's in our parents' eyes. Jordan used to tease me mercilessly about my introverted nature. He'd call me Lena the loser and hide my books. Once, he even locked me in the basement for hours because I refused to be the cheerleader at his backyard football game. When I tried to tell our parents about the bullying, they brushed it off as sibling rivalry and told me to toughen up. Despite the tension between us, there were moments when Jordan showed a softer side, like the time he stayed up all night to help me finish a science project after I got sick, or when he drove 3 hours to pick me up from a disastrous first date. These moments were rare, but they gave me hope that maybe one day we could have a real sibling relationship. Then came the accident. Jordan had just graduated college and was celebrating with his friends. Despite our parents' warnings, he decided to drive home after a night of heavy drinking. He lost control of the car and crashed into a tree. The accident left him paralyzed from the waist down. Everything changed after that. Our parents, who had always been involved in our lives, now devoted themselves entirely to Jordan's care and rehabilitation. I understand that he needed a lot of support, but it felt like I ceased to exist in their eyes. The first big event they missed was my high school graduation. Jordan had a doctor's appointment that day, and they didn't even try to reschedule it. I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, scanning the audience for familiar faces, only to find my grandparents sitting alone in the family section. Then came my 20th birthday. I had just started college and was feeling homesick. I called home, hoping for some comfort. Instead, I got a distracted, "Oh, is that today? Happy birthday, honey," from Mom before she rushed off to one of Jordan's physical therapy sessions. They didn't even send a card. The final straw was when I got accepted into a prestigious university on a full scholarship. I was over the moon and couldn't wait to share the news. I called home, my hands shaking with excitement. When Mom answered, I blurted out my news, expecting at least some enthusiasm. Instead, her response was a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before rushing off to help Jordan. I learned to fend for myself during this time. My grandparents, Tom, 78M, and Betty, 76F, became my rock. They were the ones who attended my graduation, celebrated my birthdays, and helped me move into my dorm. Without them, I'm not sure how I would have coped. My college years were a mix of academic success and emotional turmoil. I threw myself into my studies, determined to prove my worth, if not to my parents, then to myself. I made great friends who became like family to me. In my sophomore year, I met Alex, 25M, in a literature class. We bonded over our shared love of classic novels and obscure indie bands. He was patient and kind, everything I needed in a partner. During my 4 years at university, I heard from my parents exactly twice, both times because they needed me to send some of Jordan's old belongings from my childhood home. Each time, the conversation was brief and centered entirely around Jordan. They never asked how I was doing, what I was studying, or if I needed anything. Last month, I graduated with honors and landed a great job at a tech startup. I was on cloud nine until I got a call from my mom. Jordan had passed away due to complications from his condition. I felt a mix of emotions: sadness for the brother I once had, relief that his suffering was over, and anger at the years of neglect I'd endured. The funeral was a somber affair. I sat with my grandparents while my parents sobbed in the front row. I couldn't help but think about all the milestones in my life where I had sat alone, wishing for their support. After the service, something strange happened. My parents suddenly seemed to remember my existence. They hugged me, told me how much they missed me, and insisted we all go out for dinner to catch up. I was stunned. 4 years of silence, and now they wanted to play happy families? I politely declined, saying I had to get back for work. They looked hurt, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Am I wrong for not wanting to reconnect with them? They're grieving, I know. But so am I. Not just for Jordan, but for the years of parental love and support I never had. My grandparents understand my position, but my aunts and uncles are pressuring me to forgive and forget. They say I need to be there for my parents now that Jordan is gone. But where were my parents when I needed them? I feel like I'm being asked to be the backup child, now that their favorite is gone. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to maintain the distance I've worked so hard to establish, but another part wonders if I'm being too harsh. The little girl inside me still craves their approval, but the adult I've become is wary of opening myself up to more hurt. Alex thinks I should give them a chance, but he's also protective of me and worried about the emotional toll it might take. My friends from college are divided. Some think family is everything, and I should try to reconcile, while others think I owe my parents nothing. I'm torn between my desire for a family and my need for self-preservation. Am I the asshole for not wanting to reconnect with my parents after years of neglect? Or am I just protecting myself from more disappointment? Update 1. It's been a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me gain perspective on my situation. After much consideration, I decided to have a sit-down talk with my parents. I figured they deserved one chance to explain themselves, and I needed closure either way. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near my new apartment. The day of the meeting, I was a bundle of nerves. Alex offered to come with me for support, but I knew this was something I had to do alone. As I walked into the cafe, I spotted my parents immediately. They looked older than I remembered, more worn down. Mom's hair had more gray in it, and Dad's shoulders seemed to sag under an invisible weight. The conversation was intense. I laid out everything I'd been feeling for the past 5 years: the hurt, the anger, the loneliness. I told them about all the milestones they'd missed and how their neglect had affected me. I described the pain of sitting alone at my high school graduation, of celebrating my 20th birthday with just a hasty phone call, of achieving my dream of a full scholarship with no one to share it with. As I spoke, memories I had long suppressed came flooding back. I told them about the time I got food poisoning in my sophomore year and spent 3 days in the hospital without them even knowing, about the panic attacks I used to have before big exams, with no one to call for comfort, about the countless nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering what I had done wrong to make them stop loving me. My mom cried throughout my speech, silent tears streaming down her face. My dad looked more ashamed than I'd ever seen him, his eyes fixed on the table between us. When I finished, there was a long silence. Finally, my dad spoke. His voice was hoarse as he admitted that they had failed me as parents. He explained that after Jordan's accident, they were consumed by guilt. They blamed themselves for not being stricter with him about drinking and driving. In their minds, they had to dedicate everything to Jordan to make up for their perceived failure. Mom chimed in, saying they had convinced themselves that I was strong enough to handle things on my own. She realized now how wrong and unfair that assumption had been. While I understand their perspective a bit better now, it doesn't erase the years of neglect. I told them that if they wanted a relationship moving forward, we'd have to start from scratch. No pretending everything is fine, no guilt-tripping, and absolutely no comparing me to Jordan. They agreed to my terms, albeit reluctantly. My mom suggested family therapy, but I shut that down immediately. The thought of sitting in a room, forced to bare my soul to a stranger while my parents watched, made me uncomfortable. I told them I'm not interested in group sessions or forced bonding exercises. If they want to rebuild our relationship, it has to be on my terms. We've set up a schedule for now. We'll meet for coffee once a month. No pressure, no expectations, just a chance to talk and see where things go. I'm still wary, but I feel like this is a step in the right direction. After the meeting, I felt drained but also somewhat lighter. I called my grandparents to update them, and they expressed their pride in me for taking this step. They reminded me that no matter what happens with my parents, I'll always have them. In other news, I've been excelling at my new job. The tech startup I'm working for is developing an app to help people with disabilities navigate public spaces more easily. The irony of working on something that could have helped Jordan isn't lost on me. My team lead has already hinted at a potential promotion in the near future, impressed by my dedication and innovative ideas. Alex has been incredibly supportive throughout all of this. He's been my sounding board, my shoulder to cry on, and my biggest cheerleader. We're talking about moving in together soon. The thought of creating a home with someone who truly sees and appreciates me is both exciting and a little scary. None of my grandparents are thrilled that I'm giving my parents a chance, but they've promised to support me no matter what I decide. They've been such a constant source of love and support in my life. Last weekend, we had a big family dinner to celebrate Grandpa's 79th birthday. Sitting around the table, laughing and sharing stories, I felt a pang of sadness for what could have been with my parents all these years. My aunts and uncles are still pushing for a faster reconciliation. Aunt Linda called me last week, trying to guilt me into spending more time with my parents. I had to firmly remind her that this is my life and my decision. It's frustrating to have to constantly defend my boundaries, but I'm learning that it's necessary. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future, but I'm also prepared for the possibility that things might not work out with my parents. Either way, I know I'll be okay. I've built a life for myself, and I'm proud of who I've become, with or without their approval. As I look ahead, I can't help but wonder what Jordan would think of all this. Despite our troubled relationship, I'd like to think he'd be proud of me for standing up for myself. In a way, I'm living for both of us now, pursuing the dreams and building the relationships that he'll never have the chance to. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I have to say, things have taken an unexpected turn. The monthly coffee meetings with my parents started off okay, but they've become increasingly strained. At first, my parents seemed genuinely interested in my life. They asked about my job, my friends, and even Alex. I told them about the app we're developing at work, and they seemed impressed. Mom even downloaded it on her phone, saying she wished something like this had existed for Jordan. But as time went on, it became clear that they were struggling to see me as an adult with my own life. They kept making comments about how I should visit more often, how they miss having their little girl around. It felt like they were trying to turn back time, to recapture a relationship that never really existed in the first place. Last month, they invited me over for dinner at their house. It was the first time I'd been there since Jordan's funeral. Walking into my childhood home was surreal. Everything looked the same, yet felt completely different. Jordan's room was exactly as he'd left it, like a shrine to their lost son. My old room, on the other hand, had been converted into a home office. It was a stark visual representation of how they'd prioritized Jordan even in his absence. During dinner, Mom kept bringing up stories from my childhood, mostly involving Jordan. It was as if she was trying to rewrite our family history, painting a picture of sibling harmony that never existed. Dad mostly stayed quiet, nodding along to Mom's stories. Things came to a head last week. I had just received a promotion at work, and I was excited to share the news. But before I could even bring it up, my mom started talking about how they were thinking of converting Jordan's old room into a home office. She then suggested that I could move back home to help them out and save on rent. I was floored. It felt like they were trying to stuff me back into the role of the child, completely disregarding the independent adult I've become. When I told them about my promotion and mentioned that Alex and I were seriously considering buying a house together, their reaction was lukewarm at best. My dad made a comment about how I was moving too fast and that I should slow down and enjoy my youth. It was as if they couldn't comprehend that I had grown up and built a life for myself during the years they were absent. I tried to explain to them that I'm not the same person I was before Jordan's accident. I've grown, I've changed, I've built a life for myself. But it seemed like my words were falling on deaf ears. They kept talking about family dinners and holiday plans, as if the last 5 years hadn't happened. I left that meeting feeling frustrated and disappointed. It seems like my parents are more interested in filling the void left by Jordan than in actually getting to know me as I am now. They want the daughter they remember from before Jordan's accident, not the woman I've become. I've decided to take a step back from these meetings. I sent them an email explaining that I need some space to reevaluate our relationship. I made it clear that I'm not cutting them off entirely, but I need them to respect my boundaries and my life choices. My grandparents support my decision, as always. When I called to tell them about what happened, Grandma Betty said something that really resonated with me. Sometimes love means knowing when to step back. They've invited me over for Sunday dinner, a standing invitation that's been in place since I was in college. Alex has been a rock through all of this. When I told him about my parents' suggestion that I move back home, he was incredulous. He reminded me of how far I've come and how proud he is of me. We're moving forward with our house hunting plans. Last weekend, we looked at a charming little bungalow not far from where I work. It needs some work, but I can already envision us making it our own. My career is taking off, and I'm not going to let anyone, not even my parents, hold me back. The app we've been working on is in its final testing stages, and there's talk of expanding it to include features for people with visual impairments. I'm leading that project, and it feels good to be making a real difference in people's lives. I'm sad that things aren't working out the way I hoped with my parents, but I'm also proud of myself for standing my ground. I deserve respect and understanding, and I'm not going to settle for less, even if it's from my own parents. As I write this update, I'm sitting in my favorite coffee shop, the same one where I had that first meeting with my parents 3 months ago. It's strange how much has changed since then, and yet, how much remains the same. I still want a relationship with my parents, but I'm learning that it has to be on terms that respect who I am now, not who they wish I was. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I feel like I've finally reached a place of peace with my family situation. After taking a step back from the regular meetings with my parents, I've had time to reflect on what I truly want and need from this relationship. My parents initially reacted poorly to my request for space. They sent several guilt-tripping messages saying things like, "We've already lost one child. We can't lose you too." It was tough, but I stood my ground and didn't respond to these emotional manipulations. During this time, I focused on my work and my relationship with Alex. We found a house we loved. That charming bungalow, I mentioned it in my last update. We've spent the last few months renovating it, turning it into our dream home. There's something incredibly satisfying about tearing down old walls and building something new. In a way, it feels like a metaphor for my life right now. After about a month of silence, I received a surprising email from my dad. For the first time, he acknowledged their mistakes without making excuses. He admitted that they had been trying to recreate the past instead of embracing the present. He wrote about how proud he was of the woman I've become, even if he didn't know how to show it. He asked if we could try again, this time with a genuine effort to know and accept me as I am now. I was hesitant at first, but after discussing it with Alex and my grandparents, I decided to give it one more chance. I agreed to meet them, but on my terms. We had dinner at my new house. Alex and I spent the whole day preparing, not just the food, but emotionally as well. When my parents arrived, I could see the shock on their faces as they took in the house. It was so different from their home, from the life they had imagined for me. It was a bit awkward at first, but as the evening progressed, I saw glimpses of real effort from my parents. They asked thoughtful questions about my work and my relationship, and actually listened to my answers. Mom was particularly interested in the app I've been working on, asking insightful questions about accessibility issues. Dad shared some legal advice about homeownership, treating me like an adult for perhaps the first time. We're not suddenly a perfect family, and I doubt we ever will be. But we're learning to navigate this new dynamic. We've agreed to monthly family dinners, alternating between their house and mine. It's a slow process, but it feels more genuine than our previous attempts. In other news, I've settled into my new role at work, and I'm loving the challenges it brings. Our app has launched, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. We're already working on version 2.0, incorporating suggestions from users. It feels good to be making a real difference in people's lives. Alex and I are enjoying our new home. We've started a small vegetable garden in the backyard, something I never thought I'd be interested in. But there's something therapeutic about nurturing these little plants, watching them grow day by day. It's taught me patience and the value of consistent care. Lessons I'm trying to apply to my relationship with my parents as well. Never. My grandparents are thrilled to see some healing in the family. They've been over for dinner a few times, and seeing them interact with my parents in our new home feels like worlds colliding in the best possible way. Even my aunts and uncles have backed off with their pressure tactics, seeing that we're making progress on our own terms. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of my relationship with my parents. I know there will be bumps along the way, but I feel equipped to handle them now. I've learned that it's okay to set boundaries, to demand respect, and to forge my own path, even if it's not the one my family expected. There are still moments when I miss Jordan, when I wonder what our relationship could have been like if things had been different. But I'm learning to honor his memory without letting it overshadow my present. As I write this, I'm sitting in our new home office, looking out at the garden Alex and I planted together. It's a visual reminder of how far I've come, of the life I've built for myself. I'm not the same person I was when I wrote that first post, and that's a good thing.